Hello and welcome to the latest video on my top 1000 countdown. On this video we're going numbers 360 to 351. So let us look at fighter number 360, and it is the very capable Willie Lewis. Now Willie Lewis never became a world champion, but to me, definite Hall of Fame worthy. Willie Lewis beat 4 world champions, for 172 rounds against champions. And Willie Lewis beat 3 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 178 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And Willie Lewis, had no fights against rated fighters, being a pre-rating era fighter. Lewis scored 40 knockouts, 20 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 7 in the first round. Now, Willie Lewis is a pre-rating era fighter, was 0 rated in years, and his longest unbeaten run was a run of 26 fights. Now, Willie Lewis was pound for pound rated for 3 years in my all-time rankings, and he comes in with a total of 22 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 8 wins. He scored 4 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 1 win against pound for pound number 1 fighter. And Willie Lewis's opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. So Willie Lewis had 19 fights against champions. That included 7 wins, 10 losses, 2 draws with 1 knockout. He had 18 fights against Hall of Famers, including 6 wins, 10 loss, 2 draw with 0 knockouts. And Willie Lewis had 2 title fights, both of them were draws. So never a world champion, but a super tough resume Willie Lewis had, and he scored many good wins. So on to fight number 359, is former light heavyweight champion George Gardner. Now, George Gardner beat 6 world champions, for 195 rounds against champions. And Gardner beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 128 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And like Willie Lewis as a pre-rating era fighter, he has 0 fights against rated opponents. George Gardner scored 31 knockouts in his career, 10 of them in 3 rounds or less, and 2 in the first round. Gardner was top 10 rated for 0 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 16 fights. Now, George Gardner was pound for pound rated for 3 years, and he had a total of 13 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 6 wins. He scored 1 win against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And George Gardner's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Gardner had 15 fights against champions. That includes 7 wins, 5 losses, 3 draws with 3 knockouts. He has 9 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 5 loss, 1 draw with 2 knockouts. And George Gardner has 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss with 0 title defences. So there's George Gardner, 359. When we go to fighter 358, is Irish middleweight Mike Donovan. Mike Donovan, beat 3 world champions. He was a tough contender. He fought 242 rounds against champions, Donovan. And he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter individually, fighting a total of 134 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And as a pre-rating era fighter for the 3rd on the trot, he has 0 fights against rated fighters. Now, Donovan scored 45 knockouts, 12 in 3 rounds or less, and 2 in the first round. And he was top 10 rated for 0 years. Mike Donovan's longest unbeaten run was a run of 34 fights, and he was pound for pound rated for 0 years. Now, Donovan had 20 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 1 win. He scored 1 win against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Mike Donovan's opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Donovan had 19 fights against champions. That included 3 wins, 7 losses, 9 draws with 0 KOs. He has 14 fights against Hall of Famers, including 1 win, 7 loss, 6 draw with 0 KOs. And Mike Donovan never had a world title fight. So on to fighter number 357. It's a new entry this year. A name I should have probably put in before now, Buck Kraus. Now, Buck Kraus, beat 2 world champions. He fought 57 rounds against champions. And Kraus beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 54 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And as a pre-rating era fighter, he comes in with a limited total of 2 fights against rated opponents. Now, Kraus scored 50 knockouts, 34 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 3 in the first round. And as a pre-rating era fighter, he was never top 10 rated. However, he did did have an unbeaten run of 80 fights during his career. Yeah, that's not a typo, 80 fights. He was pound-for-pound rated for 0 years, and Bud Krause had 18 fights against pound-for-pounders, scoring 9 wins. He scored 8 wins against pound-for-pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound-for-pound number 1 fighters. And Bud Krause's opposition fought rate comes in at 5 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 3 from 13. So Krause had 10 fights against champions, including 7 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, with 1 knockout. He had 9 fights against Hall of Famers, scoring 2 wins, with 6 losses, 1 draw, and 0 knockouts. And again, Bud Krause never had a world title fight. But another new entry there. There's been a lot of him in top 1000 so far, and the next top 1000 I do will have even more. Now on to our next fighter, fighter 356. Okay, we're going to one of Scotland's great fighters, Ken Buchanan, the former lightweight champion. Ken Buchanan beat 4 world champions. He fought 102 rounds against champions, and he beat 2 individual Hall of Fame fighters, fighting a total of 49 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Now Ken Buchanan had 21 fights against rated fighters, and he scored a total of 27 knockouts, 14 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 3 in the first round. Buchanan was top 10 rated for a total of 8 years, and his longest unbeaten run was a run of 33 fights. Now Buchanan was pound-for-pound rated for 2 years in my all-time rankings, and he had 5 fights against pound-for-pounders, scoring 4 wins. The one he didn't win was against Roberto Duran, of course, and he scored 1 win against a pound-for-pound top 3 fighter, but 0 wins against number 1 pound-for-pounders. And his opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Buchanan, okay, had 8 fights against champions. That includes 5 wins, 3 losses, no draws, and 2 knockouts. He had 4 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 1 loss, no draws, with 1 knockout. And Ken Buchanan had 5 title fights, including 3 wins, 2 losses, no draws, and 2 title defences. So onwards, okay, we go to another new entry, who got where he got based on his overall level of opposition, but the really bad winning record in there meant he couldn't go any higher. His former coloured middleweight champion, Jamaica Kid. Now, Jamaica Kid beat 2 world champions. He fought 288 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 286 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And Jamaica Kid had 36 fights against rated fighters, which, considering he's pretty much a pre-rating era fighter, is quite a tally. Now he scored 3 knockouts, okay, 2 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 0 in the first round, and he was top 10 rated for 0 years. Jamaica Kid had a longest unbeaten run of 11 fights, and he was pound-for-pound rated for 0 years. Now Jamaica Kid had 22 fights against pound-for-pounders, scoring 1 win. That win was against a pound-for-pound top 3 fighter, and he scored 0 wins against pound-for-pound number 1 fighters. Jamaica Kid's opposition fought rate comes in at 6 from 18, but his opposition beat rate is only 1 from 13, so a big disparity between his opposition overall and his winning element. So against champions, Jamaica Kid had 32 fights against champions, including 3 wins, 26 losses, 3 draws, with 1 knockout. And he had a massive same total, 32 fights against Hall of Fame fighters, including 1 win, 30 loss, 1 draw, with 1 knockout. And Jamaica Kid had 2 title fights, including 1 win, 1 loss, with 0 title defences. So onwards we go to our next fighter, okay. It is lower weight fighter, and fantastic little fighter he was, Santos Laciar. Now Santos Laciar beat 7 world champions. He fought 168 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 15 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And he had a total of 20 fights against rated opponents. Now Laciar had 31 knockouts in his career, 7 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 2 knockouts in the first round. He was top 10 rated for a total of 7 years, and he had the longest unbeaten run that ran to 31 fights. Now Laciar was pound-for-pound rated for 3 years. He had no fights against pound-for-pounders, therefore scores no wins in the 3 pound-for-pound categories, and his opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Lossier had 15 fights against champions. That included 8 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw with 5 knockouts. He had 1 fight against a Hall of Famer. That was a win and also a knockout. And he had 16 world title fights. Included in that were 12 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw. And Lossier made 9 title defences. So we have 3 fighters to go. The first of them, fighter number 353. Holds a distinction with Sugar Ray Robinson, now he hasn't matched what Sugar Ray Robinson did, even in that feat. But Manuel Medina is a fellow 5-time champion in one division. He's a 5-time featherweight champion, pictured with each of his belts won right there. Didn't have the greatest career of all time, wasn't the greatest featherweight of all time, but the feat of becoming a featherweight champion 5 times is quite incredible. So, Manuel Medina, tough guy Manuel Medina, beat 10 world champions. He fought 262 rounds against champions, and Medina beat no Hall of Fame fighters, fighting 30 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. And Manuel Medina had a total of 30 fights against rated opponents. Now, Medina scored 32 knockouts, 12 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 4 knockouts in the first round. Medina was top 10 rated, for a dozen years at 12, which is quite a tally. And his longest unbeaten run was a run of 27 fights. Now, Medina was pound for pound rated for 1 year, and he had 9 fights against pound for pounders, scoring 2 wins. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Manuel Medina's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate is 2 from 13. So Medina had 25 fights against champions, including 11 wins, 13 losses and 1 draw with 1 knockout. He had 3 fights against Hall of Famers, all of which were defeats. And Medina had 21 world title fights, including 10 wins, 11 losses, no draws, and Medina made 5 title defences. So, 2 fighters to go. Fighter number 352 is former light heavyweight and cruiserweight champion Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Now, Qawi, beat 7 world champions. He fought 147 rounds against champions, and he beat 1 Hall of Fame fighter, fighting 57 rounds against Hall of Famers overall. Qawi had 19 fights against rated opponents, and he scored 25 knockouts in his career, 11 knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 5 knockouts in the first round. Now, Qawi was top 10 rated for a total of 8 years, and the longest unbeaten run in his career was an unbeaten run of 18 fights. Now, Qawi was pound for pound rated for 2 years, and he had 7 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 3 wins. He scored 2 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters, and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. And Dwight Qawi's opposition fought rate comes in at 3 from 18, and his opposition beat rate was 2 from 13. So Qawi had 16 fights against champions, including 8 wins, 8 losses, no draws with 7 knockouts. He has 6 fights against Hall of Famers, including 2 wins, 4 loss, no draw with 2 knockouts. And Dwight Muhammad Qawi had 10 world title fights, including 6 wins, 4 losses, no draws and 4 title defences. So that leaves us 1 fighter to go. That fighter is Saverio Turriello. Now, Saverio Turriello, beat 3 world champions. He fought 139 rounds against champions. Was Turriello in my last ratings? I'm not sure he was. He may have been. He fought 139 rounds against champions, and Turriello beat 2 Hall of Fame fighters, also fighting 139 rounds against Hall of Famers. And Turriello had a large total of 46 fights against rated opponents. Now, he scored 9 knockouts, 1 of those knockouts in 3 rounds or less, and 0 in the first round. And Turriello was top 10 rated for 2 years, and he had a longest unbeaten run that ran to 14 fights. Now, Turriello was pound for pound rated for 0 years, and he had 13 fights against pound for pound fighters, scoring 1 win. He scored 0 wins against pound for pound top 3 fighters and 0 wins against pound for pound number 1 fighters. But Turriello's opposition fought rate comes in at 8 from 18, and his opposition beat rate comes in at 4 from 13. Did mix in good company. Saverio Turriello had 15 fights against champions, including 4 wins, 11 losses, no draws with 0 KOs. He had 15 fights against Hall of Famers, including 3 wins, 11 loss, 1 draw with 0 KOs. And Turriello had 0 world title fights. So there is Saverio Turriello in 351. Again, new fighters in this 10. Okay, there's been new fighters sprinkled right from the beginning. I'm not sure how many new fighters were actually added from the last one to this one, but it is quite a number. I think it's about 25 altogether. The next top 1,000 I do will have way more than that added to really flesh it out with a lot of names who should be in there or will qualify to get in there, but that means the names at the bottom may be getting pushed out. Although I have tested my new scoring criteria, and it is really going to mix up. Very quick scoring criteria. I'm not saying what it is, okay, like I do on this one, but it's mixing it up, okay, and fighters are going to radically place different to where they place in this top 1,000. So I'm going to do some testing over the next few days, different fighters, see how the ratings look when I match them under the new criteria against each other's. If it looks good, I'm going with it. So the next top 1,000 after this one will be on the new scoring criteria. But I'll see how I go. But I think I've pretty much nailed down now a new scoring criteria. If there is any weaknesses in it that show up due to era, stuff like that, I'll put plans in place to level that off like I did on this one. So there's my latest video, 360 to 351. Okay, more videos coming over the coming days and weeks while I look to push to get the countdown finished. So I'm the Boxing Librarian, and I'm out for now.